In this video, I'd like to wrap up the series we've been doing about the opening BIM CI CD pipeline. I'd like to present what has already been written in the blog and what has already been done, what's already available on GitHub, and how you can start using it. For the complete guide, you'll want to go to openingbim.org and look at the post called From Browser to Backend, Building a BIM Validation API. Now, this is a bit of a pivot since we've transitioned from creating a front end to creating basically what's called a back end in programmer speak, which will allow us to interact with this back end using other programs. And we'll get to that in a later video. But to wrap up this series, we just want to talk about what's been done in this application so far. So switching over to GitHub here, the easiest way to run this project, if we scroll down, is to use Docker. If you've never used Docker before, just Google Docker and see how to install it. And then once you have Docker installed, you will git clone this repository. If you're not familiar with how to do that, you can click on here. And if you have GitHub Desktop installed, you can simply say open with GitHub Desktop and it will download it. And then inside of your terminal, you go to that folder, and basically this is what this is doing, change directory into opening BIM CI CD. And within the project folder, you simply run docker compose up. Let me show you what that looks like. So here in my terminal, if I show you what's in here, this is the project. We can see, for example, that we have a Docker file, and we also have, we actually have two Docker files, and we have a Docker compose. So what you're going to want to do simply to run this, assuming you have Docker installed, is first launch Docker, and then you're going to say Docker compose up. And if you just hit enter now, it will run it and keep it running sort of in your terminal. And if you want to run it as detached, you do -D, so it'll run it in the background. So what I'll do here for the purposes of this demo is just run it synchronously. And we launch it like this. And we can see that it's now running inside of Docker. Now, we don't have a lot of information here, but one key thing is this here. Server is running on localhost port 3001. Now, this is the backend. So if you actually go to this address right now, it's not going to give you much because this is an API endpoint. It's not meant for humans to interact with directly. So what we've also done is if you go to your browser and you type localhost port 80 or :80, it will take you to a front end meant for testing this application. So let's take a look at that. So once you go to localhost port 80, which is where we're at now, localhost port 80 is actually the default HTTP port. So really you don't even have to put in :80 at the end. You should see this BIM IDS validator come up. So this is just meant to be, as I mentioned before, a testing framework for the API. So here we can browse, upload an IFC file, and then watch it convert into a fragments model in this case. And you can see the log entries here. You could, of course, go see your Docker container logs. You can view the model in the That Open Company's 3D viewer if you wish. You could download the fragments model if you'd like to use it elsewhere in that framework. And down here, we can drag and drop or browse for an IDS file. And as soon as we upload it, it will run the validation against our model. And then we can see that the validation completed. We could download those results. We can also show it in the viewer. And here in the viewer on the bottom right, we can see that some of them failed, some of them passed. If I zoom out here, you can see the model as well. And you could click through and select some of these things. So that's the front end. Now, again, this is just for testing the API. The purpose of the API is to be able to enable automations through other platforms or from other platforms to be able to connect to it so that we can speed up workflows and not have to have a human in the loop for this basic stuff, which is essentially just run a check on a model. So that's a bit of the visual part of this to explain the context. If we go back to the blog post, I'm just going to scroll down here and we can look at some of the actual API endpoints you might be interested in. So once you run the API server, you can use this API v1 fragments endpoint to post a model, so an IFC model, and have it converted into fragments. And then if you know the ID, of course, from this first run, you could get that model back. You can also use the post API v1 IDS check endpoint to run an IDS validation and then get the results similarly with the file ID. And of course, there's an endpoint for tracking job IDs. So as you launch these, it will return a job ID that you can then use to track its ongoing progress by polling the API. And then here below are some of the more under the hood details if you're interested in that. Just note that we are using IFC OpenShell as the framework that runs the actual IDS checks. And more specifically, we are using the IFC tester module, or I guess tool from that IFC OpenShell ecosystem. And the good thing about using this is many people are using it, and so we benefit from everybody testing that API under the hood there. And then as mentioned and demonstrated previously, we are using Docker to actually run all of this. The advantage is there's no need to install Python locally on your machine and figure out all that configuration. You simply do Docker compose up, and it will run the server wherever that Docker container is located. So this makes it very easy to get this up and running in testing and even potentially in production with a few minor tweaks. So this is interesting because we are seeing different worlds start to converge with AI coding tools, for example, and agentic AI tools to run workflows more autonomously. So what this new little API is going to be able to unlock is we're going to be able to have AI agents take an IFC model, run an IDS check, maybe even have an AI agent create an IDS file that then we can run against an IFC, all in an automated way. So we'll take a look at that in a future video. But for the time being, just to explain how simple this is, once your server is set up, all you have to do is basically post to this endpoint with an IFC model and an IDS file, and you'll have results returned within a few seconds to maximum a few minutes, depending on the size of the file. So try it out. If you have any feedback or you find any bugs, please submit a pull request on the GitHub repo, which you can find here and will be posted below the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.